The 10th Amendment. The powers delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So this has changed a little bit with the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
But this is basically saying if the Constitution doesn't give the power to the federal government, it belongs either to the state or to the people. So
we're talking more about this and our as this recording, our upcoming Division of Power, but as it is uploaded, our looking back to our Division of Power episode.
Yeah. So a lot of the cases here have involved things like minimum wage. Does the United States have the authority to establish a federal minimum wage? Current case law says yes. We'll see going forward.
Yeah, a lot of, at least as far as I know, most of the time, the state minimum wage is usually higher than the federal minimum wage. Like,
oh yeah, no. Actually, that's a good question. What ours is going up to?
Currently, the federal one is still $7.25, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And Ohio, I think the state one, Ohio one is $10.25 for Ohio currently.
Minimum wage in the United States is going up to, or in Washington State is going up to $16.66, which people are going to freak the hell out about. But anyway, as of next Wednesday, come for when we're recording.
Lucky.
Seattle's is going up to $20.76 an hour. Because Seattle has a higher minimum wage because, well, frankly, Seattle is really freaking expensive. I believe we have the highest state minimum wage in the country. If not, we are one of the highest.
I wonder if Ohio is the lowest, or is it lower than Ohio?
Yeah, well,
and when I got my first job at 16, the federal minimum wage was $4.25.
Yeah, I think that's what it was when I had my first job too. But that I don't remember because that was a really long time ago.
But yeah, but when I during the 3 months of my first ever job, the minimum wage went up to $4.75. So I got a raise because of that.
Yeah, my last job, it was the question of were our scheduled pay raises keeping up with minimum wage? And when my partner was working for Lowe's, his pay raises weren't keeping up with Washington State minimum wage, which is one of the reasons he doesn't work at Lowe's anymore. The new hires were getting paid more than he was.
It's funny. During another job I had when I first got started at the evil place I worked at now, one time I was making the time I was making $2 above minimum wage. Went up to minimum wage went up to about 10 cents more than I was making. So everyone was making not also everyone making the same amount, including the new kids that started. So I was like, making
yeah, it's a real issue. And the minimum wage conversation is a big thing, and there's a bill that is not getting passed anytime soon. I'll tell you that would increase SSI benefits to the poverty level. There are a lot of people. Earlier this month, I went to Panera to get my free birthday pastry. And there was one woman working the register, and it was just before the lunch hour, and this poor woman was so busy. And one of the women behind me was complaining about it. I was like, oh, they're understaffed. She's doing everything she can. And she's like, well, it's just nobody wants to work anymore. I was like, ma'am. And I kind of unloaded on her about all the friends I have who are making too little to pay bills. She's like, well, those jobs aren't really intended to be something you make a living on. And her friend was like, that's not true. I was like, oh, she's going to be getting it all through lunch, and I'm here for that. But it is current case law that a federal minimum wage is permissible, but the argument is a 10th Amendment one. A lot of federal laws have been questioned under the 10th Amendment. Are they constitutional? Does the federal amendment have that power?
Yeah. We talked about this 2 years ago when we first did this. It was relevant at the time. Like it still is. That the overturning of Roe versus Wade, because it was a state decision, not a federal decision.
Yeah. And in my state, it is legal. We are very proud of that in Washington. The Republican running for governor, who lost spectacularly, was able to say was that he would enforce state law on the subject, because coming out and saying you want to ban abortion in Washington gets you nowhere fast.
When I said 2 years ago when we talked about this the first time, it wasn't legal in Ohio, but now it is legal in Ohio because a few months after that we passed an amendment to the Constitution. The voters did.
Yeah.
That and marijuana.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of really wild cases regarding the 10th Amendment. Like some woman who poisoned her husband's new girlfriend. Like, what's that chemical weapons under a federal treaty? And just case law for the 10th Amendment is all over the place. And I don't pretend to understand half of it. But it is very much, does the federal government have, under the power granted to it by the Constitution, the right to pass these laws that influence people's day-to-day lives?
Or does the state house do it, like Columbus,
Right.
or
like whose authority?
I forget your capital.
Olympia.
Olympia. Yeah, it was Olympia. I was thinking of Seattle, but that's not.
Everybody thinks of Seattle, but no, it is Olympia, which is where I live. I used to live literally down up the hill and across the lake. To get to the Capitol building from my apartment, you went down a hill and around a lake. And you were at the Capitol building. I could see it within walking distance of my apartment.
Sorry, my brain went for a second. Did you mention any court cases that deal with this amendment?
Well, there's a bunch of them. Let's see. Oh yeah, Massachusetts v. United States Department of Health and Human Services was about the Defense of Marriage Act. Could the United States define marriage as between a man and a woman if states legalize gay marriage? It was held to violate the Equal Protection Clause. But not the 10th Amendment. Prince v. United States is a lot of handgun stuff. Does the federal government have the right to limit guns, or is that a state right?
So, yeah. So in your case, would it be like any power not delegated to the parents would be the power of the big brother?
Yeah, and we don't have a 10th Amendment in this household. Yeah, in as much as yes to the people, no to the states. There are no states in this household. You know, I guess arguably their rooms would count as states, and he can enforce rules in his state, but I can overrule any of the rules he has for his room. I do have the house law that you're allowed to kick your sibling out of your bedroom, but he can't decide arbitrarily that she can only come in his room if, she agrees to clean it for him. I mean, he can, but he can't force her to clean his room. There's very few laws that I can think of that he would attempt that would be permissible under house law.
So the second half, if not the state has the power, then the people have the power.
Yeah. And that would be things like house law. The federal government isn't allowed to force me to let one of my children into the other's room. The state isn't allowed to force me to let one of my children into the other's room. I have the power to control how my household is run. Well,
I guess
I have the power.
I guess also that also applies to county and city powers.
Yeah. My county is my state has a minimum wage, but Seattle is allowed to have a higher minimum wage. Fireworks are legal in Washington state, but they are illegal in most of the cities in my county. I'm unincorporated, so they're legal here. It's like the Wild West here on the 4th of July. The mom or the dad of my daughter's first boyfriend, he's a nice kid. But they had just moved here, like right before 4th of July. And I was talking to him at Halloween that year, and we agreed that if the people in this neighborhood pooled their money, we could get a professional fireworks show for what people spend on fireworks in this neighborhood.
Like real fast, it's like your older daughter's boyfriend or Sandy's boyfriend?
Sandy's boyfriend, yeah. Oh. She's had a couple of boyfriends, and I don't, she's 7. I don't take it that seriously. Like, they hold hands together and they play together on the playground, and that is being a boyfriend and girlfriend when you're their age.
True.
The real shocker for a lot of people is that her first boyfriend was black. Another shocker is that I believe they have both been named William. There are a lot of Williams in her grade. I don't quite know how that works.
It has a type. The William type.
Like 4 Williams in her grade.
Yeah, kind of like the dry county in, I think, Tennessee, where they make the alcohol.
Yeah, the county where they make Jack Daniels. They can't sell it. It's a dry county. Dry counties are enforceable under the 10th Amendment. A lot of weird laws are enforceable if they're, municipal or county ordinances under the 10th Amendment. In theory, if my county wanted to limit Christmas displays on people's houses, they could probably do that, provided it wasn't found to be a First Amendment violation. Speed limits on the federal highway system, that's controlled by the federal government. but the speed limit through my neighborhood is controlled by Thurston County.
It still is, but I remember. So I remember growing up in the 80s, every highway was 55. No matter
Yeah,
where.
no, and now it is allowed to be set by the states, but if the federal government decided they wanted to change it again, they could.
Okay.
Um,
So I remember. I forget. I think it was. I think Montana went hit from 55 to whatever was reasonable. I think that was.
yeah, there basically is no daytime speed limit in Montana.
Whatever.
Leading to a comedian I saw once said, cops in Montana will pull you over because they're lonely. There's a lot of laws that you're living with on a day-to-day basis that are actually not part of the Constitution because they're local ordinances. And you still have to follow them because 10th Amendment says, the state and the local and the people and whatever have these powers. I think sovereign citizens use the 10th Amendment to get around things, but I don't pretend to understand sovereign citizens, so meh.
Like a certain Hovind character.
Like a certain Hovind character, who managed in his lawsuit against his son to prove why sovereign citizen stuff doesn't work. Because his son just didn't have to care. Yeah. So you do have a lot of rights. You do have a lot of control over your own life. But your city has a lot of control. Your county has a lot of control. And that's if your state and federal government doesn't take the control.
From president to governor, the county commissioner, the mayor.
Yep. And I mean, I live in unincorporated county. Technically, my address is Olympia, but we are not in Olympia proper. So I just answer to the county, and then, in theory, if I lived a couple blocks over, I guess the homeowners association would come into it somewhere. But we don't have one, thank God.
Yeah. I get different cities, different things, because I live like say 10 miles away from the main city in my county, but I'm a different city. But my niece lives in Pittsburgh, and their city is way bigger than like 3 or 4 of my cities here combined together, and they're all still Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Well, Los Angeles is this enormous patchwork of cities. Los Angeles didn't grow up because you don't really want to grow that far up in earthquake country. Also, there was a law for a long time that no building could be taller than City Hall. So there's that. Los Angeles grew out, and a lot of what people think of as Los Angeles is all of these little tiny jurisdictions that are now within the city limits of Los Angeles. Beverly Hills is part of Los Angeles. Hollywood is within the city limits of Los Angeles. A lot of these other places, and they still sort of exist legally, but it's a huge mess. And even when you're out of the city limits, you'll cross a street and be in a whole new city.
Yeah, it's like us. Like, I guess we're in the area, Dayton area, but we're technically our own city, not like a suburb of this. I guess we're kind of people. Some people call us a suburb of Dayton, even though we're technically our own place.
Yeah, I grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles.
Suburb of a suburb.
Because Pasadena is a suburb of Los Angeles, and arguably Altadena, my hometown, is a suburb of Pasadena. We didn't have our own school district. We were part of the Pasadena Unified School District. There are no high schools in Altadena, which doesn't exist as as far as the county is concerned, but does as far as the post office is concerned.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more about this, or we will have talked more about this
Yeah.
when this is happening.
yeah.
Timelines.
Yeah, 10th Amendment time is very complicated. No, 10th Amendment has a lot to do with balance of power, and so we will definitely be covering the 10th Amendment in the talk that we will have given by the point at which this is up.